Hello everybody, my name is Manu-S and welcome to another Eternal Contenders video series. While I'm still not fully back on track again and still feeling kinda sick, I've figured I feel like well enough to record another video for you guys, so I don't leave you waiting for too long. And it is about time to finally unveil the long-awaited Combrano Plate Midrange deck that Batteriez and I have been working on together for a while and people have been asking about. Batteriez took this to rank 1 like twice, I think, in the last week. Like he got it once, then got passed and reclaimed it. So yeah, let's talk about the deck. The deck is actually quite different from like old Combrano Plate type decks, which were more like Combrano aggro Voltron type decks. Well, this one is basically like a very flexible, like big aggro deck or like an aggressive mid-range deck. Almost plays a bit like an aggro control deck of sorts if you want. So let's talk about it. First of all, we have the unit suit, which is 4 Awakened Student, 4 Desert Marshal, 3 Ember Acolyte, 4 Healer, 4 Siraf, 4 Copperhall Elite, and 4 Jekk the Bounty Hunter. You see right, Jekk makes another big showing in a constructed deck of mine. The deck, by the way, the original idea for the deck comes from Batteriez. He approached me in-game after he added me a while ago after some game we played and wanted to show me a deck that he's working on. And yeah, as usual, I'm always open to discussing stuff with other people. He showed me what he's got. And yeah, while his list was still like kinda raw, I could see what he was going for, what he was aiming for, and liked his like approach and idea, because it was definitely kind of different, like not going like super aggressive and or Voltron with Plate, but rather like in a more like controlled good stuff way basically. So I helped him like tune it on that angle basically. Like I suggested that he definitely should play Awakened Student because he was light on units, especially light on early units, and he had too many like Finest Hours and Protects. So from there on we started like discussing and tuning and improving the power base and stuff. And yeah, it was like a very fruitful collaboration and a lot of great discussions were had on, and testing was done to arrive at this final list basically. And Batteriez has great ideas and also has a pretty good understanding of like deck building and the game in general, and that really showed and paid in this collaboration, and he quickly earned my respect and my trust if it comes to like judgments about how the deck performs or what it lacks or what it might need and stuff like that. Just as like a background story to how the deck came to be, and that it basically, the core idea is the brainchild of Batteriez, and the end result is a product of our very fruitful collaboration on his original idea basically. Alright, so with the unit suit we basically have like the best units for the strategy in each curse slot. Awakened Student gives us early offense and defense and is just super efficient, scales well with the game with our fairly power heavy deck. Desert Marshal is just a solid removal / anti-aggro card early on, and can even like apply some pressure on an empty board against control-ish decks. Ember Acolyte is mainly there as a way to fix our influence and also to have enough power drops for stuff like Siraf and our 5 and 6 drops and Awakened Student and stuff, without flooding too much, since the body is actually reasonably relevant. Against aggro it trades with a bunch of stuff, against control it attacks on empty boards a lot, And if push comes to shove, it can wear a Deepforged Plate, which has come up before and is pretty decent, depending on the matchup. Especially better than not having a target at all. Then we have Healer. Card is really nice and very flexible in the deck. Provides early defense and some life gain. But it also has a lot of utility, like making one of our good units better, like Awakened Student or Copperhall Elite or Jekk, for example, or even Siraf. Giving them 3 extra health can be a big deal and make a big difference, especially on a unit with plate. Makes it a lot harder for the opponent to gang trade the plate wearer and stuff like that. Or like shoot down a Jekk with like an obliterate. If they don't do it right away and we turn it into a 6/7, they can't do it at all anymore and stuff like that. The card just does a lot of great stuff in this deck against all kinds of archetypes, basically. And yeah, Siraf doesn't need much explanation. It's a good offense, defense 3-drop, and can easily win the game on her own once we reach 8 power. Which is why it's nice to be able to reach 8 power reasonably often without flooding too much, which is where Acolyte definitely helps. Then we have Copperhall Elite. It's the best 4-drop for this type of deck, simply because the Aegis is great to set up a turn 5 plate on it. And it has no double influence cost, which makes it very nice on the influence, because stuff like Titan, for example, would really strain the influence to a point where the deck would get a lot more inconsistent. Also, it doesn't die to most common removal. It only dies to Death Strike or Vanquish, and only if they have something to pop the Aegis, which is pretty relevant. So it's also, like, even without the Aegis, a pretty safe Deepforged plate target, since there's only like 2 cards that stop it, even if the Aegis is gone. And last but not least, we have Jekk. Jekk is an amazing plate wearer. Quick draw is incredible with plate. An 11/9 quick draw, overwhelm, endurance dominates the board like no other. And once again, same as Elite, only dies to Vanquish and Death Strike. And we have ways to stop even those. And yeah, the Silent Stun is great utility. It basically gives the deck 4 additional stuns, 4 additional silences to deal with problematic units, and the stun can generate some really big tempo. Like, imagine going Copperhall Elite into Deepforged Plate and then following that up with a Jekk that normally leaves the opponent without a board to contest a 9/9 Aegis unit, making it super hard for the opponent to come back from this. And if you ever go like turn 6 Jekk, turn 7 Jekk, that should beat most opponents, because the double stun and 6 power quick draw in a row should destabilize any opponent so much that they cannot come back from it and eventually have to start jump blocking, especially because they are so hard to remove. One thing to mention that might not be obvious is the deck at some point was naturally dodging Annihilate entirely, which is pretty good right now, especially because a lot of people are playing a lot of Annihilates because there's so much time and so many Titans, and Epic Combrei where there's Ascendants and Iron Thorns to Annihilate, and this deck basically completely dodges Annihilate. Since we added Ember Acolyte, there is targets for Annihilate again, but since Ember Acolyte draws us a power card, it's fine if they're annihilated. It's not a big deal. It would be optimal if we would have literal 0 targets for Annihilate, so it would be a completely dead card stranded in their hand, but that wasn't possible. Acolyte just became too important to make the influence work well enough and the power. But yeah, all of the main units are immune to Annihilate, which is a pretty big deal, and some of them also to Suffocate, making the deck really well suited against shadow removal, which is a pretty nice side effect. And then as enhancement, basically we have 1 Righteous Fury and 4 Plate, since once we have a Plate, drawing a Righteous Fury can break any game wide open, even if the board is like stalled. And even without a plate, a Righteous Fury on a Jekk is also a pretty big deal. Like having a basically 12 damage quick draw lifesteal unit also dominates on every board basically. And it's a nice combo trick and or surprise win condition with Finest Hour. Like I had games where I had like a Siraf or Copperhall Elite and went like turn 5 Righteous Fury plus Finest Hour on them to win the game out of nowhere. Multiples are bad simply because the card is still situational and clunky, and drawing 2 is devastating, but having 1 in the deck to surprise kill the opponent or up the punch potential with Plate and Jekk even further can come in pretty handy, as well as gaining like more life than Combrei healer. And for removal, we run 4 Torch and 3 Vanquish, and the Desert Marshal and Marshals and Jekks if you want to count them. So that gives the deck a lot of built-in ways to deal with various kinds of threats. Vanquish is especially great right now, with so many big mid-range units around. We were close to running 4, but the thing is there's still like a fair share of matchups where the card is not that great, and we also didn't really have room for a 4th. And we also have a lot of like ways to make a big unit so that we can deal with a lot of dumb big units on the opponent's side that way, unless they have stuff like Mystic Ascendant that we definitely need to get rid of. But with the silence and stuff, we have enough ways to do so. And the last cards that need to be explained basically are Finest Hour and Protect. Finest Hour and Protect are not the most intuitive cards in a deck like this, especially since the deck is not like your typical aggressive deck that wants Finest Hour, which is also why there's only 3. Finest Hour basically mostly works here as a way to protect your plate attacker a bit in combat, because it makes it harder for them to set up like a gang block that is profitable. It also synergizes once again nice with Jekk's quick draw, and it's also necessary against Armory to fight off relic weapons or like relic weapons from other decks too. Like for example, there's Hero control decks that run Runehammer. Runehammering a Jekk is a pretty big deal. If we drop a Jekk on 7 with like a Finest Hour backup and they try to Runehammer it, we can just Finest Hour and then they are blown out, and the Jekk is hard to remove for them then, and stuff like that. Or it protects from like a lightning strike, and or helps like a Copperhall Elite attack into like a Titan, for example. It just does a lot of things basically, or protects like an Awakened Student on turn 3 from a Torch, and so on and so forth. And the same basically goes for Protect. Well, I'm normally not the biggest fan of Protect in decks like this, or like in a lot of like aggressive decks, because the card is situational and you are better off running more units, and a lot of your units are interchangeable. In this deck, that's not the case. Like we play a lot of fairly uninterchangeable premium units that it's very worth protecting, like an Awakened Student, a Siraf, a Copperhall Elite that got its Aegis popped, or a Jekk are all units that are extremely worth protecting at various points in the game. And obviously we also have Plate. So what we can often do is either end of turn protect into Plate, or wait for 6 power, drop Plate, and have Protect back up to blow out the opponent. Like if the opponent goes for, say, their first Vanquish on the Plate and we protect that, that's a super big deal and often can decide games. And also protecting a unit, like a key unit from a harsh rule. They harsh rule some chaff like Amber Acolyte and Desert Marshal and like a Siraf, and then protecting the Siraf and dropping a Plate on it is a really big deal, for example. So yeah, the card has been pretty important in protecting the Plate and Jekk and Siraf, and also preventing tempo blowouts basically. And also it can save our life. Like can counter a burn spell to the face from Stone Scar burn decks, which are still a thing, and coming back more and more. And it also counters various other things targeting us, like Subvert or Sabotage and stuff like that. Card is just super flexible, and in a deck that plays a lot of like high value targets that is worth protecting, and plate that you want not to get blown out with, and a couple of units that are capable of dominating the board on their own or winning the game on their own, then protect stock goes way up. So yeah, protect has been pretty great, and 3 is a nice number on both because you don't want to draw too many. Drawing 1 is nice, drawing the second is often not that great, but fine, and you want to reduce the chance of drawing too many of these basically, which is why there's only 3. Unlike in a typical aggressive deck where you would definitely want 4 Finest Hour because it's like part of your main plan and keeps you attacking early on. Alright, last but not least we have the power base. Power base is set up to be heaviest time, also pretty heavy justice, and as little fire as possible. Right now, the way the power base is built, we have 21 time, 18 justice and 15 fire, and including the Seek power, and the Acolytes bring it up to 21 justice and 18 fire. So it's basically important with this deck to usually, if you're missing second justice and second fire and have a Seek or an Acolyte, always get the second fire first, because you have a lot more outs to hit justice than fire. So fire is the harder one to get, so always get the second fire before the second justice, because the chances of drawing into the second justice naturally are much higher. And yeah, we have 8 banners, 8 seats, which has been a pretty good split. We have basically virtually 14 sigils to have an undepleted seat by turn 2. And Acolyte helps with later seats a bit to have undepleted seats for like turn 4 or turn 5 sometimes. And banners are just great. The deck has enough units for banners to be really great past turn 2 a lot of the time, past turn 2 or turn 3. And yeah, that's why they are set up the way. The distribution was basically an almost scientific process to get the amount of influence right, and also the distribution of the influence. For example, Rakano banner is the best banner because if we are missing like influence and a power for Deepforged Plate or Jekk the Bounty Hunter, and we need to draw power off the top, we want undepleted power, and Rakano banner provides both missing influences for this and missing influence for this, and as a banner enters play undepleted in most stages, while a seat would be depleted when we have no power left, and stuff like that. And yeah, 8 seats and 8 banners has been working pretty well for early and mid to late game stabilization, and we have worked on this power base basically the entire time we have been playing the deck, and is what has changed the most and the most often basically throughout the course of deck building, and right now is at its best, and I think probably the best possible power base to have for this deck. So don't mess around with it. This was a lot of hard work, and it is really in a great place right now for the power requirements of the deck. It really can't get much better. Yeah, that's it for the deck. As usual, I'll jump into ranked games with the deck. As I said, Batteriez was rank 2 with it twice. Currently has been exploring some other stuff and dropped lower in the top 10 again. I'm currently in 7th place, partially with this deck, partially with other decks as usual. I rarely play only one deck and nothing else. I work on various decks and experiment with various decks, but this definitely is part of what like got me there. So yeah, stay tuned for the games. thanks for watching, don't forget to like and subscribe, and see you in a moment with the first half of the game. Stay tuned.